Mr. Apaturaј, NATO has already showed how important for the alliance is the agreement between Greece and Macedonia. But the agreement is strongly opposed by the political oppositions in both countries. What is their responsibility, especially of the opposition in Macedonia before the referendum?
First, thank you for the invitation to be here. It is true that NATO is paying very close attention to the discussions in both countries, and that we encourage a positive resolution to the name issue and an agreement on that. And that is something that we believe this whole region would benefit from. We also believe that NATO would benefit and this country would benefit from membership in NATO. And that is possible if there is a successful resolution to the name issue. So for both of those reasons, we do believe that a successful resolution is good for everyone. When it comes to the opposition or the government, it's obviously not for me to comment on what they do. But I do believe that, and NATO believes, that the most important message that can come from all politicians, opposition or government, is to get out and vote. This is a historic decision for this country. Everybody of all ages will be deciding on the future of this country in NATO and in the EU or not. That is intricately linked to the successful resolution of the name issue. So our bottom line is all politicians should be encouraging, as we do, everyone to come out and vote.
But we haven't heard that from our opposition party, VMRO, DPMN. They didn't call their supporters or members to go and vote, but to decide by their own what they will do.
Indeed, and of course, again, I can't comment on what they say. What we believe is that this decision, the successful resolution of the name issue, is the only obstacle before this country can join the family of nations that is NATO. All of our countries in NATO are waiting to receive this country as the next family member around the NATO table. We share values, we share interests, and we take care of each other. And for that reason, the NATO allies have said very clearly that successful resolution of the name issue will mean an invitation to join. So we believe, because this decision is so important, everyone should go out to vote. My own country, Canada, we've had our own referenda. We know what it is. It's very complicated. It can be very personal. But in the end, this is about the future of this country, and so we believe everyone should have their say in it.
So you're optimist about the referendum. You have met our officials in Brussels here. So how do you see the whole atmosphere before the referendum?
I would say a couple of things. One is the atmosphere within NATO about what is happening here is very positive. And a number of difficult but important decisions have been taken to improve the relations between this country and its neighbors, and I include also, for example, Bulgaria, to improve interethnic relations, and that is something the Allies really welcome. And the countries that are in NATO, which neighbor this country, have been the strongest advocates in the run-up to our last summit, promoting the membership of this country in NATO. They believe, and we all believe, that this will bring stability here. It'll help the whole region. And our experience is, most recently with Montenegro, that membership in NATO creates a better investment climate, which means more companies will bring money here. The experience we just had with Montenegro is, in just 1 year, the investment in the country by other NATO member states has more than doubled. So it really has a positive effect. So for all of these reasons, we think the direction of travel is good. With the successful resolution of the name issue, then the route to NATO will be clear.
You've mentioned Montenegro, and reminding me, how is NATO concerned about Russian interference in the referendum. We know what happened in Montenegro, and we already received as Macedonia threats from Moscow that Macedonia will become a legitimate target because of membership of NATO.
It is obviously the case that in the run-up to Montenegrin accession, there was Russian interference in the country, including at quite a high level, and that's of concern. And of course, we watch very carefully disinformation attempts throughout this region. But based on discussions that I've had here and discussions that we've had in Brussels, we think that the discussion that's taking place in this country is in the right direction, that people are learning about what NATO is, learning about what the decision is that's being put in front of them, and that the information being provided to them is, by and large, from the government, helping to inform them. One of your ministers was recently in Brussels and said to one of our very senior people, and I was in the meeting, that when it comes to historic decisions, the people of this country make the right decision. And we want to help the people here make an informed opinion, but most of all, we want them to make an informed opinion and go and vote.
But you haven't answered me how NATO is concerned. The American Defense Minister Mattis is coming this weekend, and he said in Pentagon clearly that he's coming only because of the Russian interference in the referendum, and his message will be to the Macedonian people to vote freely.
Indeed, and voting freely and voting informed is what we want. We see outside actors influencing every NATO country and every NATO partner. Russia's one of them, and that happens in Canada too, I can tell you. Certainly it's happening throughout this region. But
is it happening in Macedonia?
Well, that is, I think, for your officials to discuss. What I see is a positive discussion taking place, by and large. Of course, there are exceptions. But there is, in general, good information being provided. Many international officials are coming. I'm not a politician, so it's not for me to say whether or not people should vote yes or no. But many of them have made that case. What I want to do and what NATO wants to do is provide the maximum possible support to the government to inform the people on the decision that they're making. And we think that that discussion is being taken place, by and large, in a good atmosphere.
How do you estimate the security situation in the region, having in mind that there are ideas about changing borders, trade of territories, according to the negotiation between Serbia and Kosovo?
In general, our feeling in NATO is that the region is going in the right direction. And the reason for that is nothing provides more stability and security than NATO membership and EU membership. And more of this country's neighbors are joining NATO and moving towards or have already joined the European Union. And those countries want this country to join that group. We are convinced that joining the family of nations that NATO is will bring more stability, better good neighborly relations, and a better investment climate. So that is the macro, the major contribution to stability in the region, and that is happening. Of course, there are always fragilities, and in this region, there are all sorts of fragilities. And so, we watch very carefully, but we don't just watch, we also have offices in different countries around the region, including here. We have a significant military force in Kosovo to ensure security and stability, and we will maintain that as a contribution not just to security in Kosovo, but throughout the region. And as people may know, in fact, the Serbian government is a strong supporter of our KFOR mission in Kosovo because they also believe it contributes to security. So NATO will be here, and we will do our best and our maximum to ensure that the region continues to move in the right direction. But we do believe it is moving in the right direction, and we believe that this country can take the next step into NATO as part of that process.
But there are still security risk, and it can have any consequences to Macedonia.
Well, there are always security risks here, there is no doubt, and this country has experienced all sorts of difficulties. But I would mention that the security challenges that this country has faced don't just include military threats, but also, for example, environmental risks like the recent flooding. Being a partner to NATO, but even more being in NATO, means cooperation amongst our military, but also civilian services, more interoperability, more training together, so that we can come and help each other when these things happen. Of course, that happened recently here, and the Secretary General recently visited one of the villages that had suffered from this, but that will only deepen with NATO membership.
Let's go back to the agreement between Macedonia and Greece. While you're here, there are many difficult steps to be taken to this agreement to be implemented. What if Greece is not holding to their ratification of the agreement after the referendum and constitution changes? What if Greece will not do their part? Will Macedonia become a member of NATO?
Well, first, I remember when I first started speaking to the media, the only training I got was never answer questions that begin with if. But I will this one time. I can tell you, having been in NATO many years, and now having participated in the discussions leading up to the summit decision, that Greece has consistently been a strong supporter of this country joining NATO. And that was as much the case in the run-up to the summit as it has ever been. So our belief is in what the Greek government has told us, and that is that, of course, taking account of the various sequences, a successful process here will be mirrored by a successful process in Greece, despite, as what everyone has seen, I'm sure, very strong public opposition in some circles to this agreement. But they are determined to make this work. We have confidence that they can make this work. Once, of course, the steps are taken here, they will take their steps, and then we can proceed with ratification. So we are focused on Plan A, and we have confidence that that will work.
Secretary General was in Athens after his visit in Skopje, so he get there even more view. So what he was told in Athens about that?
Well, I mean, he met with Prime Minister Tsipras, and they discussed all sorts of issues. This was one of those issues, but it was very much in line with what I had discussed with you. The Greek government believes that this is an historic opportunity that will not come again for the foreseeable future, that it is difficult for both countries to compromise. But actually, that's what NATO is all about. NATO is about compromise. We often say, if everybody's equally unhappy, then we have a good deal. And that's, I think, the philosophy to a certain extent here. Not everybody loves all aspects in either country, but it's a good proposal. Mr. Nimitz has been very clear in saying that it not only is it good, but it's not going to come around again for a long time, and that it is an historic opportunity for the future of this country to move forward. And I think very much for young people, their future and this country's future lie in Euro-Atlantic institutions. The only obstacle is the successful conclusion of the name agreement, so we hope that it will be successfully concluded.
There are negotiation talks going on between Macedonia and Alliance. Is this process have a deadline?
So we have begun what we call the accession talks, and then you're quite right, it has started. We had a team come in July, and we are continuing our discussions, both here and in Brussels. That process will continue for a few months. It cannot be completed until there's a successful resolution of the name issue. As soon as that happens, we will be in a good position to move to the next phase, which is the signature of what we call the accession protocols, and that would happen in the spring. At that point, the ambassador of this country would take his or her place around the NATO table, participate in the discussions, sitting next to Norway, and being a player at the NATO table.
How soon Macedonia can become a full member of NATO? What are your expectations?
Well, again, focusing on Plan A, our experience is that once we move to the process of ratification, meaning we sign these protocols, as I just discussed with you, but then it has to go and be ratified in the parliaments of the 29 NATO allies, and that just takes a while because parliaments have their own business to conduct. It has generally taken somewhere around a year from that point. Sometimes it's taken a little longer, sometimes a little less. But I could imagine that about a year after we move to that process, all the NATO parliaments will have proceeded through the ratification process, and then we run the flag up at NATO headquarters. That's the prospect.
Thank you very much for this interview, Mr.
Thank you.
Apaturaј.